yes, we're looking at genres of big picture, and this is secretly part 2. So we've gone through 4 stages: primitive, classic, parody, and revisionist. And secretly I cut myself off before I said not every genre will hit the parody and revisionist stages, or necessarily have to go through the parody before they hit the revised version of it. And sometimes people lose interest with the genre before we even get there. We have primitive, they have classic, and then people move on. Who knows? Now we're going to get into the other really important element of why you end up with films that match each other, where they come from. Okay, these 3 aspects that we're looking at are: what is the psychological appeal of this type of film? Why, at this point in time, is this type of film relevant to audiences? And then finally, how does this type of film balance the things that we're going to see with something worth going to see a new version of, right? Let's start with psychological appeal. Pretty obvious in some cases, and then in other cases you're like, What I want you to do with your 3 films in your genre is look to say, what is it that an individual, on an individual basis, really enjoys seeing in these films? Like, what is it that appeals to our human nature, to the things that individually we care about and value? Okay. Oh, hi, kitties. Look at something that appeals to the inner experience of the viewer. Does this genre fulfill a certain need in people? Does it fulfill different desires? Like rags to riches stories are the kind of like, oh, I also would love to discover millions, or find out I'm a princess, or, fill in the blank. The other fun thing is, as humans, we do secretly love being scared, right? Little toddlers will love peekaboo. No, I'm making something up. Just ignore that last part. But we enjoy experiencing fear together in a place where we know that we're not actually going to get stabbed. But vicariously, we're kind of experiencing that adrenaline and all those sorts of things. So is there something in your film in your genre, that kind of hits at those little areas? People love seeing people fall in love, so there are going to be love movies for a while. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Next, I find this most fascinating, is the contemporary relevance. And what we're looking at there is what's going on in the world at large while this genre is really hitting its stride, and how does this genre appeal to the zeitgeist, to the philosophy of the moment, to where people are at in general in society. The thing I find most fascinating is that there was a huge resurgence of World War II movies, partly spawned by members of our society who fought in World War II, getting older, and people being like, oh my God, we need to celebrate these people. But I find it really fascinating that simultaneously, the United States was involved in conflict with the Taliban and in Afghanistan, and also in Iraq. And I like to draw the connection that while we were involved in these military conflicts that were long and drawn out and really messy, and fighting with often an unknown other, the kind of warfare that used a lot of things like improvised explosive devices, that was causing a lot of PTSD, that was that had shifting objectives a lot, that at that time, I think that the appetite was for people to harken back to movies where it was very clear what the good side and bad side was, where it was very clear that the American military was powerful, efficacious, came in, kicked ass, pardon my language, and saved the day. So it's fascinating to me to look at, like, oh, there's there's an appetite for this genre because this was happening at the time. Sometimes it's very direct, you know. I'm trying to think of something that's really direct right now. But, like, there was only one movie making fun of Kim Jong Un, I think it's called The Interview. If there had been more genres of people meeting with dictators of foreign states, maybe that would be a genre itself. But, like, sometimes it's very connected to the time frame itself. The subject of it is current events, right? But other times, that connection between the world at large and the world of the genre films is really fascinating to pick out. I think I've beat this point into the ground, so let's move on to do the last one. A genre isn't a genre if things don't match, right? If there aren't any rules or patterns that something follows, then it's not a genre, you know. On the other hand, if there's a cookie cutter formula for the same type of films and not any wiggle room or not any development, then these films aren't going to be successful. So what is really interesting is looking at the genre itself, or looking at the films and saying, how are they fitting within this, but also doing their own thing so that they're a compelling view. If you look at kind of the classic stage of something, or once a genre has moved from the primitive stage into really a golden age of fill in the blank of genre, whatever it is, you'll often see that the most successful versions of that have something new to offer and have progressed or developed the themes within it or the characters within it along with the needs of society or along with the needs of people. Otherwise, you know, if you think about, well, why suddenly are we not seeing as many, let's say, Marvel movies? No offense, because I do love them. Either the society's already gotten its fill, or and there's nothing compelling in them, or there's no reason to see something new, right? They haven't moved along and addressed, I'm just repeating myself, they haven't moved along and addressed little things. So anyway, it's really interesting to me, because on the other hand, if you've got things that are vastly different from each other, they don't necessarily hang together as a group. I think one of the interesting things about seeing a million subgenres of stuff is that we're now a very literary and media savvy. Oh yeah, hi, yes, hi Ramona. Yeah, no, we're an audience that is aware of all of these different things, and we have a million different voices that are worth listening to, and a million different options for stuff. So okay, so the idea of subgenres showing up, I think, is really more along the lines of people have brought their own new ideas to bigger, more general genres, and then are kind of copying those things. Because if you stop and think about it, the movie industry is still super young compared to books. So the parameters, even let's say 20 years ago or 30 years ago, of, well, you're going to see these 4 types of movie. You're going to see the rom-com, you're going to see the war movie, you're going to see come on, brain, you're going to see a Western, and I don't even know that often horror was, given its own genre per se. Well, that sort of works, and things fit into those categories relatively neatly for a while, until there are so many versions of these different films out there that they deserve to be categorized into ever smaller chunks. which basically is to say, as you are watching your films, kind of the more fine-tuned while still meaning something you can make your analysis, the more interesting it is, because then you're finding insights and making connections that maybe other people aren't necessarily seeing. Anyway, I hope this has been helpful. I guess the last thing is genres coming and going, tying into the last thing, that a genre doesn't have to stick around because people change. People have new ideas. The next group of people come along, they're like, I don't care about your rules. I want to do my own thing. And yet, because people are at the same time people, and we crave seeing our stories and other people's stories up on this giant screen or on our phones or wherever we're watching the stuff, there are always going to be interesting variations, and there are always going to be patterns that we enjoy seeing as time goes on. Okay, hopefully that all made sense. I hope you're having good days, and okay, bye.